Good?
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
go for it. All
Got my coffee. Good
All
to
right.
go.
So we are here. This is something that I've wanted to do forever. And I've decided to pull the trigger on it. So we are going to film my first episode of my what hopes to be one of many podcasts where we bring a little bit more information about industries that are within the real estate industry. And I can't think of a better person to have here for episode 1 than you, Benny. You've been here in my 8-year career now as a realtor. You've been doing inspections for me since when I started real estate. So it's fitting that you're my first guy. And you just did a home inspection for me last week, and that's where we were.
Yes.
We were just talking about some funny,
Chatting about it.
yeah, some crazy stories and things that we see that we're just laughing about our jobs and how there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that nobody gets to see. And we realized that this is something we should talk about this stuff, and here we are.
Here we are today. It's exciting.
I'm excited. Okay,
Podcast number 1. I'm on.
podcast number 1, buddy. There you go.
I'm honored.
So, all right, let's we're gonna cycle back a bit, and let's talk about you. So let's do the full spiel. We'll try to chop it up.
Full spiel?
Yeah, the full spiel. So Benny, who are you?
Oh, Beni, last name Bennet. Let's see. My company is Northwood Home Inspections. You'll find us online at justaskbeni.com. You'll find us on social media, the same thing, justaskbeni.com. Makes it easy. Beni is spelled B-E-N-I, so we'll call that unique. I've been doing home inspections for 25 years now, so that's kind of interesting. I've been in the business since my 20s, which is quite unique, different, even today. We're a multi-inspector firm. Having a great time.
So there's how many inspectors in the company now?
There's 3 of us in the company today.
And it started with just you, or were you working for somebody?
Started with just me. I did transition. I did get into the business and doing some work with another inspector.
Right.
And that was a good learning curve. In fact, I would recommend anybody getting into the business today.
Right.
Do some training with somebody else. You'll learn something from them.
Right.
So it's a mutual thing.
And so you know, it obviously varies from industry to industry, but in your industry as a home inspector, you're licensed and certified. Talk about that for a bit. Walk us through that.
So we are a licensed industry today. When I first
got in... So you weren't always?
We haven't always been. When I first got into the business in 1998, we were the Wild West. Anybody with a business card and your municipal business license, technically you were legal to go out and do home inspections.
Anybody could just be a home inspector.
Anybody could be a home inspector back
then.
Anybody who had a business license, now you got marketing, and a business license keeps you legal, and that was it. So myself, I have a construction background by trade. I'm a carpenter. And getting into the business, I went to BCIT, did some transition that way, learned a bunch of stuff about electrical and plumbing and heating systems, and that was part of the transition because I always had subtrades doing all that stuff.
Right.
But as far as the construction side of it, I knew about roofing. I knew about building and construction and how houses were put together. As an industry, we got licensed in 2009. So that was kind of an interesting transition.
You just got licensed as an industry as a whole. Is that Canada or BC?
That's BC.
So in British Columbia, any inspector that was walking around or advertising themselves as a home inspector in BC before 2009, there was no actual license or certification. You could just wake up one day and get a business license.
Correct. And there were a number of people that would do part-time home inspections, one or two a month, and that was it.
And people relied on the advice of a home inspector who had no formal license or certification. Correct. So did that then
we were the Wild West.
Yeah, so like liability, insurance issues, people saying my inspector told me it's fine. That must have been a thing.
Those of us that prescribe to doing things better would do things like belong to the local Home Inspectors Association.
Okay.
Carry errors and omissions insurance in the event of something bad that happened.
Right. But it wasn't required.
It wasn't required at all. No, it wasn't required at all. We would go through voluntary certification that was available in the industry at that time. So that gets into certification. Those of us that prescribe to doing it better, we were doing other things.
So you have certifications now?
There are certifications.
So which ones do you have?
Which ones do I have? Currently, I'm a certified master inspector. Previous ones that I've held and been accredited to would be registered home inspector, accredited home inspector, national certificate holder. These are all certifications that exist and have existed in the industry. Right. Certified master inspector is the top one today.
Okay. And then
I'm also on the, so there's additional lists within the licensing board. That's
Right.
Consumer Protection British Columbia, where they have lists for trainers because the new people need to have field training done. And then there's another list for evaluators where people that have done their training need to be evaluated to get their license.
So you've been
So
doing
I'm
this
on
long
both of
enough.
those. I'm on both of those
So
lists.
you've been doing this long enough that you teach people that are trying to become home inspectors, and then the people that you don't teach, you are the one that's testing them.
Yes, absolutely. So
So you're on the inspectors ICBC road test type guy. You're the one that watches and makes sure everybody can actually do home inspection.
Being this senior in the industry, 25 years now, I'm also called upon quite regularly, not regularly, but on occasion, where there is a dispute against a home inspector or something that might involve a home inspector. And then the question gets asked of me by lawyers. It's called litigation support, where sometimes it's the defense, sometimes it's the plaintiff.
So
They're
you've been
asking
to
a
court
question. Oh, yeah.
as what?
So,
Like an expert witness?
Oh, yeah. It's expert witness. Litigation support is what they call it. But yes.
So then
that happens. That happens.
And in that context, who you've been there for whom? The inspector?
Oh, on both sides.
On both sides.
On both sides.
So you're relied upon on both sides, where people need to.
Sometimes it's defense counsel that's calling, and they want
Right.
an expert opinion as to what happened with that other inspector. So we get called in as a third party expert. In other cases, it's a plaintiff who's saying, "Hey, I don't like this, and I'm claiming this against that home inspector, and I think they were negligent." So their lawyer will hire us to give them an expert opinion on that.
And in that sense, you're obviously you're neutral.
Oh, we're very neutral. Absolutely.
Right. So then when needed, fellow inspectors will say, "Trust me, I did the right thing. Ask Benny," and Benny gets called in.
It does happen on occasion. It does.
And when the public needs
not
it,
a
it's
side
what
of
would that
the-
Benny guy have done compared to what my inspector did?
Yeah, it's not a side of the industry that I will say I enjoy.
Right.
Because number one, I don't want to be critical of other people in the industry too.
Right.
But it
When called upon.
It does happen. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The bunch of years ago, I was called upon to give an opinion on a case where it was the most claimed against a home inspector and a seller in any claim in BC.
Oh.
So, yeah. The
How much was
value of that litigation, I think, was 2.5 times the value of the house, or at least that's where it started.
What?
Yeah.
That's all you can say, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's probably all I should say.
Fair enough. We'll leave it at that. Okay. Jumping into, let's go on a bit of a tangent here. The actual home inspection.
Right.
We've had weird markets where people are buying homes subject-free, cash offers to just buy the home as is.
Yep.
Then there's also people who may see this that have never actually gotten a home inspection. Given today's climate and prices, maybe they'll be getting a home inspection at some point in the future.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like? Like, I think people will assume a home inspector's that's just it. They just inspect the home. But what does that mean? Walk us through that.
So in a normal, we'll say balanced market,
Sure.
usually first contact is somebody phones us, client calls us, they want an inspection, and we will take that phone call, walk them through the process of confirming details, communicating with other parties to make sure we have access, making sure that we have the calendar scheduled set, get there to do the inspection. We'll actually, there's a bunch of emails that go out to clients as well as buyer's agents, listing agents. Listing agents are obviously working on behalf of the seller. We're confirming details. We're confirming to make sure that house is ready for an inspection. In terms of, put angry dogs away and stuff like that. Just making sure that
Is that a thing?
Oh, very much so. We've ran into it too many
wow.
times. Making sure that the house is available in terms of unlocked access to all areas, so that we can get the majority of or all of the inspection done, at least in as best possible way as possible. So that's the way we look after things. We always recommend clients stop by towards the end of the inspection, at least towards the end of the inspection, so that we can go through information as a summary, walk through the house again, point out any things, answer questions, show them everything that's there in terms of how to operate the house. These are all normal things for us in terms of doing a home inspection and working with our clients.
Right.
So your original question touched on a bunch of different things. So what happens when it's an extreme seller's market and people can't do an inspection? That's one question. What happens if people are purchasing into a pre-built or pre-construction contract? Pre-construction, where somebody signed an offer, they've committed 2 years before, say, they even are going to assume the house.
Right.
We always recommend doing a warranty inspection before the completion of the 1 year warranty on your house, because your builder's carrying all of that.
Right.
So around the 9 to 10 months of
So
age.
like obviously to touch on that, so there's a lot of people that will get they know it's a regular part of their home inspection. It's one of those things where everybody's like financing and inspection. Less people care about the title of the property, which is really, really important. But inspection's one of those things where it's a no-brainer as number 2 on the priority list.
You want to know the condition.
Right. So right after financing, it's usually it's assumed that the inspection is the second clause. When it comes to inspecting a property that does not yet exist, but it will at some point, and a buyer, let's say myself, I'm buying a pre-sale, and it's going to complete in 2 years.
Yeah.
If I'm
or
getting
6
the
months
key,
or 3 years, whatever it is.
When I get the key for the property, should I be inspecting it prior to that completion, before I've even paid, before I've even got the keys? Or is there, because there's no recourse at that point. You've already bought it.
Yeah,
so when should I be calling you if I want, or should I be calling you at all if I'm buying a brand new unit?
At the time that you're getting your keys and you're walking in, you've committed.
Right.
Pre-construction.
Yeah, you've already bought it.
Pre-construction contract, it's already done.
Yeah, you bought it 2 years in advance.
Exactly. So in those cases, yes, do the inspection before the completion of the warrant of the builder's portion of the warranty.
Right.
So builders, without question, are giving you a 2, 5, and 10 warranty. That's normal in British Columbia. But the builder is also holding that first year or 2 years, depending on the warranty.
Most will say if there's any defects or anything of the sort within 1 year. Right.
So we always recommend clients move in, enjoy the house, be happy. If you're noticing some things, start writing your list down.
Right.
Call us before the end of that warranty inspection. Whatever
so
the
if
list
that warranty is 1 year, when should they be calling you?
9 or 10 months in.
Right. So if you're listening and you have purchased a pre-sale property,
yes,
9 months after you've taken possession of that property and it's been lived in by you or a tenant, 9 months in is when they should call you.
Yep.
You will help prepare a list of deficiencies that they can take to the developer.
Exactly.
That will get fixed properly. Because you're just going to look and be like, I think that needs to be fixed, but you can actually take a comprehensive list.
More than just a comprehensive list. So, of course, the conversation starts with what is your list as a client that's lived there now for a period of time?
Right.
What are the things that you're concerned about?
Right.
Because in some cases, and this does happen, the things that you're concerned about are normal characteristics to the way the building is put together. They're not necessarily a deficiency. In some cases they are, in some cases they're not.
Right.
So after we go through that, we'll take a more thorough look at the rest of the building from our perspective, applying our standards, experience, and expertise to it, and then give you that list that you can then take back to the builder.
Right. So if it is going to get, if the builder is providing you with the opportunity to tell them about what's wrong with their unit, you actually take a proper list of things to get fixed.
Yep.
That's where you come in.
Yep.
Because the pre-sale market is obviously huge, so people need to know about 9 months in to their actual having actually taken possession
before the completion of the warranty,
right?
Because held by the builder.
When it's new, it's nice and shiny. People aren't going to be thinking, oh, I need to get a home inspection.
You know, this gets into the question about the value of a home inspection in terms of when should I get an inspection? Should I always get an inspection? And being reasonable about it. If it's brand new, you're confident in your builder, regardless of whether it's a pre-construction contract or not. Move ahead. If you're confident in your builder, move ahead. Totally fine.
Well,
especially if you're finding problems.
We've talked about pre-sale construction, but brand new homes. You've done number of inspections for me on brand new homes, and we still find stuff.
I have affectionately said for years, you tend not to find leaky roofs and rotten decks with new construction.
Right.
But we found enough leaky roofs to know better.
Yes,
it
absolutely. Because we've caught, or I should say, you've caught in new builds that I've tried to purchase for clients before. Mistakes with wiring, outlets, like things that are not as they're passable, but they shouldn't be there given the prices we're paying today.
Typically, those types of things would come down to alterations post-construction.
Right.
Whether it was the electrician making a shortcut because now they're putting in a basement suite, or a homeowner making a change, or another contractor making a change. Those things happen, yes.
So, in a nutshell, what is it that you inspect when you enter a home?
So there is a standards of practice in British Columbia.
Okay.
We're a licensed industry, so there's standards of practice that we have to adhere to in terms of what is a home inspection, what do we look at, and those things include things like foundation, structure, electrical, plumbing, and heating systems, all exterior finishing, including, of course, the roof, exterior walls, windows, doors, decks, all interiors, including kitchens, bathrooms, fixtures as well. So making sure that sinks, faucets, toilets, showers, tubs, those things work.
Right.
Turning things on, functionally checking them. That's the normal process of doing an inspection.
Okay.
So physically turning lights on, the furnace, the
Right.
heat, air conditioning, making sure that it's working and
Right.
working properly.
Right.
That's the normal process.
And we're going to get into it because, I mean, there's obviously, you have to have some stories after having done this for 25 years.
One or two.
But before we get there, so what are the tools that you use?
Tools of the trade typically include things like all the normal hand tools that you would use to open an electrical panel,
Right.
cover on a furnace, air conditioning system, covers. Ladders to get into attic spaces, moisture meter to check things like shower surrounds to see if things are seeping, leaking, that type of thing. Infrared camera, that's normal. Aerial cameras, in some cases we use drones as well. It just makes it for better, more succinct, easier access, safer access to things like difficult roofs as well.
Right.
So those are the normal tools of the trade.
And with regard to that, the actual tools and like being on site, I've got a question. Have you ever actually had difficulty? Because you touched on this earlier. You'll try to schedule access and like how and when the inspection is going to get done and who's going to open the door. How often is it, or how common is it that you get to the site of an inspection and there's no way to get in, or somebody just forgot? Is that a thing?
It probably happens once every 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
And usually what happens, what's happening is somebody's late in getting there. One of the questions.
Okay, so you're not being forgotten about.
It's not that we're being forgotten about.
Okay.
But it does happen 2 or 3 times a year
Where you're just forgotten about.
where they forgot to cancel because the transaction got canceled for whatever reason.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And that's part of us communicating with the client, the buyer's agent, and the listing agent.
Right.
Including emails the day before to
confirm
the
that
details.
it's actually happening.
Yeah, because we don't want to show up where we're not needed.
Right.
So
I've actually had it happen where this is a home that we had sold in North Delta, and somebody was so confident in their financing that they did go ahead and get an inspection done. And they had their findings from the inspection.
Yep.
And again, they were so confident in their financing that they went ahead and made us an addendum of repairs that they would like us to make, and then they asked us to reduce the price by a certain amount to make up for the things that they didn't want us to fix because they would do them differently, and that was a little bit above and beyond what my seller was willing to do. And then they didn't remove subjects.
Right.
And then somebody else tried to buy the home.
Right.
And they got their own inspection. And their inspector did not find the stuff that the last group did, which raised a lot of interesting moments because, you know, my seller was a very fair seller.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was interesting because we sat him down and we said, hey, there's a document that we use, the property disclosure statement. And we had to sit him down and be like, look, man, you know new stuff about your home. We have to just share this stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm just going to fix all the stuff that I know. And just the things that I was going to give him a price break on.
Yep.
Tell them this is what it is and deal with it as you will. And I mean, we did, and it did work out, and that family did purchase the home. But it was so crazy to me that 4 days apart, 2 different inspections, and the inspector number 2 missed a whole slew of stuff that was very, very important to the previous party.
Right.
And so the discrepancy was what was interesting, but the discrepancy or lack thereof is why you're like my go-to guy, because you don't miss stuff.
Licensing is a minimum standard. So there is some
Say
variety
it louder for
to
the people
quality
in the back,
of inspectors
Benny.
in the industry.
Licensing is a minimum standard.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. That you said that, not me.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question. How do you communicate bad news?
Oh, that's easy. Succinctly. Nothing is sugar-coated. Nothing
because it's tough. Somebody's dreaming.
Nothing is theatrically
they've written an offer on this house.
Embellished.
They've negotiated their price.
Yeah.
They're thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get this house. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And in walks Benny. How do you tell them it's
So
not?
the typical is we're sitting like this at a table often. We're standing around the kitchen counter. We're talking about the house. We're going through the report as more of a summary. We're telling you what we're finding. And let's face facts. Most homes don't have major problems. Most homes have maintenance. The older the house is, usually the more maintenance is required.
Right.
So in terms of major deficiencies, that's a highlight item in the report.
Right.
So where there's major deficiencies, very succinctly, it's this is what you have, and these are some options in terms of moving forward with it. Now, for the majority of clients, that's really what they're looking for, is that information. They don't want us leaning this way or this way. They just want the simple goods. What do I do with this?
Right.
Because at that point, they're often making a decision. Do I move forward? Do I not move forward? Do I talk to my realtor and maybe discuss something with the seller, see if we can come to a compromise? Those are choices
nail on
you
the
as
head,
a realtor get to make.
Because myself, I personally like to make sure my buyers know the difference between a maintenance item and a deficiency, or something that's a major deficiency for that matter.
Right.
Because I don't want the inspector to say, okay, well, this filter needs to be changed and that needs to be repaired and that, but it's normal. And them to just see 3 things, 5 things, oh my God, and freak out. It's great that we have you there to highlight those things, but it's more so the deficiencies, because that's the major deficiencies that's where you really, really would need to be concerned, because that affects then your decision on whether or not you want to go through with the purchase, right?
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Your typical client, of course, we don't know what their experience is in terms of housing, where they've lived, and everything that they've looked after over their lifespan, however old they might be. So that's something, of course, that's the client's bringing to the table. We tell you how to look after this house. We're telling you what's there, how to operate the house, things like heating, windows, where stuff at. But in terms of major deficiencies, they need to know succinctly what are the major deficiencies, if there are any major deficiencies.
Right.
And then from there, they get to decide on how they're going to manage that.
Okay.
And in some cases, the way to manage it is to find a better property that they might be happier with. Now they get to make that decision. We don't make that decision.
You just provide
for
the
them.
information.
We provide the information. Yeah. There's no head nods or anything like that.
Right.
So,
but have you had to, I want to dig here. Have you had to tell somebody, look, this is a major deficiency, and they've said, oh, it'll be fine, and you're like, no, it's not going to be fine? And
I've had clients over the years where I'm talking to the client, and sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's 2, sometimes there's the whole family, there's the entourage there, and I'm not getting the vibe that they know how to look after this thing. They're maybe they're not handy people, and they're buying a heritage home that needs maintenance and upgrades and things all over the place. Now, in some cases, they'll happily move forward because they've got the budget and the pockets to hire somebody else to do all the work, and that's fine. I don't know what their scenario is like that way. And in some cases, clients will move forward. In some cases, they won't. And then on the other side of that coin, the same conversation is the client that hears that there's 2, 3, 4 maintenance items to look after, and they're, in my mind, overly concerned about that, so they decide not to buy that house.
Over maintenance items.
When in reality, there's $500 worth of nothing to look after.
Right.
That's just normal stuff.
Right. So it just comes down to having that information beforehand and knowing what to expect.
Client should have the information.
Right.
Then they can make a decision on how to look after that.
Right. What are some types of properties that you do not inspect, while we're on the topic?
What types of properties do we not inspect?
Yeah, well, we're like, what is something, maybe to add on to that, so that's a 2-parter. What is something that if it's on a property, you kind of draw the line and you say, well, that's out of my expertise?
So as home inspectors, we inspect all types of housing.
Right.
So that can be single-family detached, townhouse, apartment, condo, doesn't matter. Mobile homes. We also inspect mobile homes. I know some inspectors, they don't have that experience. That's totally fine. We do. Float homes. I've inspected many float homes over the years.
Float homes.
Yep. Now, what we're not
homes on water.
Homes on water. What we're not inspecting is the hull. It's the barge. That's the surveyor. That's the marine surveyor that's looking after that.
Okay.
And all the equipment inside it.
So the floatability.
We're looking at the structure above.
Okay.
So yeah,
And
because they're often built exactly the same way as a house.
Right.
There's a few differences.
And that then all falls under your license, I'm assuming, or your certification. Is that actual? It's home properties, not you. Does your license allow you to do commercial or anything of the sort?
We also look at commercial, light commercial. The engineering, the architectural firms tend to be geared towards the bigger stuff,
Right.
the large malls.
Right.
But in terms of commercial units, yeah, we look at those quite regularly.
Um,
Smaller stuff.
and we've done a bit of a full circle on what it is the inspectors do and some of the things that you've done. But let's talk. Let's talk more about some of the specific things you've done, because that's where the juice is, right?
I wouldn't say anything too crazy.
Pretty
easy.
You're not gonna
run of the mill. There's nothing too exciting. We wear blue shirts, so
Um,
kind of plain.
have you ever had it? And this is just me wondering, right? Because oftentimes it's the realtors are trying to put together a deal, and you have the home inspector who you bring in to check and find things that you don't know about.
Mhm.
What happens when you find something that your buyer obviously doesn't know about, because it's just something that we're not going to be able to see, but you find it and the seller doesn't know about it as well, but it is major? Do you have any like stories where
like major deficiencies that nobody knows about?
that nobody knows about? Like, do you have, like, tell me about something. Like, what do we got?
So first off, we often leave an inspection where the seller might have lived there for 5 or 10 or even 15 years.
Yeah.
And in most of those cases, we know more about the house than they do.
Well,
on the average
would
inspection.
make sense, because
So-
that was they're in a routine.
So learning about the house is something that happens all the time,
Right.
every day. So finding things that nobody knows about happens regularly.
It's a job description.
Yeah, dryer vents disconnected in the attic space. That's fine.
What's the craziest thing, though?
It's not a major deficiency. Major deficiencies tend to be things that take a lot of effort and
To ignore or to
they take a lot of effort to fix, repair, put the house back together. Sometimes they're dangerous, sometimes they're hazardous, sometimes there's conditions that are unsafe.
right.
So I remember one house a bunch of years ago, they had experienced a backyard failure, geotechnical failure, where the backyard slipped into the ravine behind the house.
The
40
backyard
40
failure.
feet, 40 feet of the backyard.
Okay, so it's a deeper property,
Well, flat property,
right?
ravine in behind.
Right. And if it just slipped,
And
it
the
just fell.
hillside to the ravine collapsed.
right?
And the
And
backyard
that's my wife
slipped into the
wondering where I
ravine.
am, of course.
The whole backyard slipped into the ravine.
Yeah.
The seller,
Actually, you know what? I'm
this
going to
happened,
shout out
this
right now.
happened 6 months before we were doing the inspection.
I'm filming a podcast. Bye.
Nice.
She made
So-
a guest appearance.
This backyard failure had slipped in. The backyard had slipped
So
into the
40.
ravine
So is this 40 feet deep? Like,
six months before we were doing the inspection. We were there afterwards.
oh, you came after the fact.
We came in after the fact. And the seller was telling me about, oh yeah, we were sitting there one night watching a movie and we heard this crash in the backyard. We thought a semi truck hit the backyard, which didn't make sense because there's no road back there. And they opened the sliding door and I almost
And
fell.
their backyard's gone.
I almost fell 20 feet.
Oh, no way. So it came all the way up to almost the home where
Yeah.
the foundation was.
40 feet of yard.
Oh, so when you meant backyard failure, you meant the entire
Backyard
failed.
went into the ravine. Yeah. So when we were there 6 months later, in that case, they
Was
were
that because of a sale then, or
sale.
okay?
Yes.
So they decided to sell after their backyard failed.
Yeah. So when we were there 6 months later, that seller was lucky because the city came to the table, and this is what they were telling me. The city came to the table and restored everything because the ravine was part of city jurisdiction, and the ravine was the cause of the problem.
Right.
So there was a new retaining wall system up the ravine wall, and the backyard had been replaced.
Okay, so hold on. Let's rewind a sec.
Yeah.
Their backyard failed up into basically their back door. So you step out, you open your door, and it's like those movies where somebody's running and you
Fall
open a door, and
20
it's just like.
Fall 20 feet if you
Okay.
walked out.
After the city has fixed that, if you had to buy that home, would you buy that home?
Oh, the amount of engineering that would have gone into that retaining wall system?
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Okay. That's just that's
See,
unfathomable to me. I'm
similar type of conversation.
right.
Totally different house, different year. I can show you houses that we've inspected where the whole house is leaning by 5 to 10 degrees
Oh yeah.
because of the ravine in behind and the soil erosion that's happening over a long period of time.
You must see that on homes that are on hillsides and stuff, where especially when like homes
usually-
sagging forward or back. Like
Usually what happens is at some point the foundation cracks, it breaks. So you'll
Right.
get a portion of the house that is trying to lean or slip away from the rest of the house.
right.
A moment ago, what I was talking about is the whole house is actually leaning. Whole house, not a single crack in the foundation.
Oh,
There's enough rebar
so
there that it's intact.
It's intact.
It's
but
intact.
The entire thing, everything underneath the foundation itself has shifted.
You can stand on the front street and see the whole thing doing this.
What do you do when you have the leaning tower of
Pisa?
Scott Road or whatever we want to call it, wherever that was? How do you fix that? Is that fixable?
It is fixable. It is
How?
fixable.
What would that look like if you have a
Usually-
house that is literally leaning?
Usually a repair like that is going to include excavating around the perimeter of the house, all the foundations, lifting it up. Usually it's going to be something like helical piles where they lift the thing to the point of making it square, straight,
And then
level.
fill underneath again?
No, what they're doing is the helical piles go into the point that they're finding hard enough material that they can feel confident in leaving it there.
Right.
And any loose
So
material.
put the houses on permanent crutches.
Houses on permanent piles, which is fine.
Fair enough.
Again, a lot of engineering goes into those types of things.
Have you ever seen that happen?
Oh yeah, we've inspected houses where they've
Before and
been
after?
repaired that way.
Before and after? Did you have to go back and just check if it was like all it looked?
Usually we don't see.
I guess it's the company that did the job is just gonna be like, look,
Yeah, the company
put
that
a level
company
on the,
that does
on
the
the
job
front
is
door and
gonna
be like,
have,
look, it's level.
they're going to have their engineer that's part of certifying it. So usually we don't see those things too much after the fact.
Okay.
We see it after the fact when 5 years later, again, somebody is they're now selling it and
Yeah.
somebody else is buying it, so we see it.
Well, okay, let's keep fishing. So that's a good example of you having come in after some crazy stuff. What is some crazy stuff that you found that maybe some illegal construction or something that the seller put in but didn't think was a big deal, but you were like, hold the phone.
You're bringing up the conversation of, are there certain types of things that we run into on a regular basis, or what are the weirdest things that we run into? Who creates the biggest problems?
Let's go yes to all those. What have you seen?
Usually it's homeowners. Homeowner modifications typically top the list of weird things,
Right.
because tradespeople, even if the tradesperson has never been well taught from the beginning, and maybe they belong to an industry where there is no certification that's required, like a gas fitter, electrician, plumbers, they have trade qualifications that they need.
Yeah, you can't just wake up and decide you want to do it.
Carpenters and roofers and painters don't.
So anybody can wake up and decide they're a roofer or a painter or a carpenter.
Well, there are industry standards. There are industry certifications that they can decide to have, but they're not required to always have them. It depends on the jurisdiction that you're in too.
Okay.
But homeowners, well, anyways, I was saying about tradespeople. Tradespeople, even if they've been working in the industry for 10 or 15 years and they've never been taught very well, they typically always want to do a good job. So tradespeople do not top the list for us in terms of the weird stuff that's
work
created.
that you've seen.
Poor
Right.
workmanship.
So
Homeowners by contrast, though, they're creative. They'll do just about anything. You know, it comes
as
down,
long as they're willing to pay for it.
in some cases it comes down to going down to their local big box lumber yard and, hey, you can do it, we can help, and they get creative. They get creative. And on a personal note, the word creative in a tradesperson's business name is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, especially plumbers. Please, as a plumber, don't have the
Don't be
word creative. You know, as tradespeople, you want to do it well.
Yeah.
You don't want creativity. Artists, creative.
What's something that you've seen that just
tradespeople know.
set off alarms and you had to tell your buyer that, hey,
So one house that we inspected, the person that apparently did the work was a contractor,
okay,
but they got into the attic space and they started removing a bunch of the webs out of the trusses. So your typical roof truss is built out of bottom cord, that's your ceiling,
right?
top cords, that's the shape of the roof,
Triangles.
and then webs.
Yeah, in between.
Those are all the triangles.
Right.
The webs create all the strength.
Right.
And this person had taken webs.
And they took them out
They took webs out from the front of the house to the back,
to do what?
and the span was side to side. Now, when I first got to that house, walked inside,
Why did they take
I
those webs
noticed because they created a room upstairs.
Oh.
Anyways, in getting inside that house, I noticed tape joints front to back were all opening. They were tearing. So in other words, the ceiling was spreading. And that's because in removing the webs, they weakened it and everything was moving outwards.
Oh, okay. So
When-
you were standing in the house and you could see the splits
Oh,
in
yeah.
the drywall.
You can see it in the ceiling inside.
And that's because
On the top floor.
they're triangles, but the weight was so heavy it was
Everything was spreading.
from the bottom.
Everything was spreading at
And
the
you
bottom.
caught that.
Oh, yeah. It was plain as day when you got
How
it.
did that go?
Plain as day when I got into the attic space, because webs were removed. They put a room up there. They were creating space for an extra, I think it was a single bedroom or something. They had a staircase through, well, it was more of a ladder, through a closet area to get upstairs. And plain as day when you get
But they
upstairs
had
into the attic
finished it.
space.
So they structurally compromised the home to make a room.
They structurally compromised the house for the sake of putting a room upstairs.
And you could see from downstairs that the house was splitting apart from the bottom.
You can see it in the tape.
How did that go when you had to tell them?
Well, that was an interesting one because, of course, the information went to the client,
Of course.
our client, and they, of course, included their realtor, the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
And he had a conversation with the listing agent. And from what I understand, the listing agent had a conversation with the seller. And, of course, the seller got upset. They called their realtor, or they called their contractor, and the contractor swore up and down, well, I've done many jobs like this, and it's perfectly fine. And the funny part about it is that information came all the way back to our client, and our client decided to disagree with us on the condition.
To disagree with you.
Yeah, our client decided to disagree with us.
So you caught that the house was
We caught the
literally
problem.
breaking apart from the bottom.
Yeah.
And they said, we don't agree.
I think what happened is our client wanted the house so much
So
that
bad.
they wanted us to recant what we said, which of course we were not going to.
Liability. No. Hell no.
Of course we're not going to.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, in any case,
So they still bought it.
in any case, I don't know. We often don't know if a client actually moves forward on the purchase, but yeah, you're free to make the choice to purchase the house, even if there's a major deficiency. That's a decision you as a buyer get to make.
But then, so, okay, in that context, in that story, you highlighted an issue and
And as a major deficiency.
as a major deficiency, and it went back to the seller.
Mhm.
And that's crazy. You took a bunch of strength out of the structure of your home, and your
Yep.
house is literally falling apart from the middle.
any
It's collapsing inwards, essentially, is what it is,
Any
right?
roof structure needs to be built to the heaviest load that's typically going to be there, which is
Right.
normally going to
So
be
you
snow,
can't compromise that,
which is normally snow load.
right?
So yeah, you start modifying trusses, and it's a big deal.
Right. But in that context, that's an example of your buyer was
Negligence.
just in love with the home and they bought it possibly anyways. it
Oh,
sounds
they
like.
probably
If they would, they wouldn't have disagreed with you if they wouldn't.
They
weren't gonna
probably
buy it.
bought it.
But what's a time where you were just like, "Good job, Benny," because the buyer was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm not buying this house." Like, have you ever like that? Because that would happen, and I've had it happen for me before, where we thought the house was perfect,
Mhm.
and it's not that we blame the inspector, but you've come in and you found a bunch of things, and I've looked at them and like, dude, you cannot buy this house. That must happen. You're laughing, so 100%. What's the craziest thing that was kind of just you were so flabbergasted that you saw it, but it resulted.
Well,
in the
that house
purchase
with
not
that
happening.
house with the cut trusses really does top the list
Right.
of crazy things you run into. It's a homeowner modification. It's structural failure that's in that beginning stage of collapse, whenever that might be.
Right.
You could see it across the ceiling as everything was spreading. The other typical deficiencies, foundations cracked, things that are leaning, modifications that just aren't done properly. I remember finding electrical problems in a house where the client, and this I learned in the conversation as it continued, the client as a family, they had experienced a house fire that was caused by an electrical problem. And as soon as we told them about the electrical problems in that house, it was the proverbial go white, no way, don't want anything to do with this house. They walked out.
Wow.
So, those are things that are, of course, memorable. Now,
Right.
of course, we knew none of that history. We're just telling you about the problems in the house. Now, the problems that we were telling them about in that particular case were fixable.
Right.
But they had no tolerance to it,
So here's a question.
which is fair, totally fair.
You get called in to do a home inspection.
Uh-huh.
Generally, I'm guessing, you're arriving on site and it's the seller or maybe the selling agent, but more often it's the seller of the home.
That's opening?
Yeah, that's providing
Usually
you
it's one of the
access.
realtors.
Sure.
Yeah.
In the instance where it's been a seller that's providing access,
Yep.
have they ever told you something they shouldn't have told you? Curious guy watching the inspector.
I wouldn't say that there's ever been an instance where the seller told us something that they shouldn't have told us, because anything that they tell us, of course, we're going to pay attention to. Oh,
course.
this was a problem over there, I fixed it. This was a problem over there, I fixed it. Maybe they didn't. So those types of conversations are fine. As an industry, our local real estate community often recommends, and this is on the side of listing agents, often recommend that sellers not be home during the inspection. That's fair.
Absolutely. I make sure nobody.
That's totally fair.
I usually try to open, but there are
if
the nosy homeowners that are like, "What are you here for? Why are you inspecting my home? It's perfect."
So, in talking about those people that might follow us around because of their curiosity,
Yeah.
sellers are often following us more like a shadow than our clients are.
Right.
Because, well, this is an easy way to think about it. The seller has already accepted an offer to sell their house.
Okay.
They've crossed that emotional line in the sand to let's sell the house. Now let's accept that offer. Nothing good of a home inspector is coming. Nothing good of the inspector being there is coming down the line. So at best, from the seller's perspective, all they're going to do is move forward with what they've already decided. At worst, something's going to change.
Right.
So
and you are the face of change.
And we are the face of change. And that I think is why some sellers follow us through and want to explain why this is okay, or maybe want to avoid us looking over there. Yeah, and that's fine. That's on them.
Quick tangent question: pools and hot tubs. Can you inspect those?
Oh yeah,
Awesome.
They're not part of the standards of practice.
But
the industry standards of practice.
Yeah.
Our experience, our expertise. Yeah, we can inspect those things.
You can do it.
Yep.
Good to know. So you can do it. Pool guy. He's a pool
Yeah, there are a number of additional things that inspectors can potentially do depending on that company's experience.
Just to provide to increase their value offering.
Yeah. So one of the conversations that's come up in the last few years in British Columbia is about radon. So what is radon?
Yeah, we see them in our property disclosure.
Yeah, it's a new item. It's a new line item in the property disclosure statement. Now, fortunately, Metro Vancouver, Fraser Valley, there's not a lot of radon.
Right.
But radon testing is something that other inspectors do in other jurisdictions.
Right.
And I don't mean local Vancouver. Other jurisdictions where other cities in North America where there is a higher radon content to the ground.
Right.
Some inspectors go through the process of actually testing for radon.
Okay, and that's something that we do see in our PDS, but it's not necessarily.
It's an added value.
We don't see those levels
to the client.
Yeah, but you do inspect for it.
So inspecting for radon requires sample analysis, and in Canada, Health Canada only recommends long-term testing, which means 90 days. The test equipment has to sit in the house for 90 days. Yeah, so the only way that's going to happen with a real estate transaction is because a seller is so proactive that they want to do it beforehand.
Right.
For a buyer, there's no way.
Or commercial properties, long-term deals.
If it's a health facility, they might think about doing that. Most commercial property owners aren't going to be thinking about it.
Interesting.
And fortunately, locally, we don't have a lot of radon, so it's not recognized as being that much of a concern. But it is a topic.
Okay.
BC has some hot spots. Fortunately, they're not Vancouver, Fraser Valley, although there is some measurable areas even within that. So.
Okay. Well, more from the Beni story box. Have you ever found something that you were not supposed to find?
Not supposed to find. Oh, we've gone into a few properties over the years where, and I hate to say the words because of the negative connotation, but hoarding.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As inspectors, we always carry 2 pairs of shoes. There's the ones on your feet when you walk in.
Right.
And that's the reason we carry 2 pairs of shoes is because sometimes you step in funny things. Occasionally it's the backyard. Sometimes it's the roof.
Pause. Have you stepped in dog poop or cat poop before?
Oh,
okay. Yeah, that's
happens.
That's a yes.
Yeah. But when you go inside, obviously you don't want to wear the same shoes.
Of course.
Now, going into your average house, we wear indoor shoes. First thing that comes out of the tool bag, indoor shoes. There's been some properties where people are hoarding, and it is such an absolute mess. Yes, putting on your indoor shoes is going to make them dirty. So we'll just wear the outdoor shoes through.
No way.
Yeah. In some cases, there's been a few of those properties where you open a door. Occasionally it's a bathroom. And you look at the condition and you go, write it off as biohazardous, not inspected.
Biohazardous? Is that
biohazardous, not inspected, plan on replacement of everything.
Oh, no way. So you're just saying, in layman's terms, nope.
Right. It's all you can do. I am not going to walk in there and flush the toilet or do anything.
And check if everything works. No, that's not.
No, you just know it.
No. Wow.
Yeah, so that happens.
Have you ever found something that was maybe being deliberately hidden by a homeowner or in the form of any kind of construction or problems?
Grow ops. Yeah, that's...
Have you actually ever
Found a grow up where they were
An
hoping
active grow up, or
or
have you found instances of like I've seen instances of like that looks like there was a grow up here, but you've never seen a live.
So currently, this year, today, right now, not a lot of grow-ups that we're seeing in houses.
Right.
Not a lot of remnants of grow-ups in houses.
Right.
Go back 10 years, go back 12 years, 15 years. I could hardly go a week. And again, I've been in the industry for 25 years. Back then, I could hardly go a week without finding something that looked like it had something in it at some point. In fact, especially back then, I had my short list of 10, 12 things that we were always looking for that would say, yeah, likelihood.
Benny's top 10 signs of a grow up.
Likelihood is. So, yeah, there have been many houses over the years where you walk in and, just based on the stuff that's there, the things that you're looking at, there's a illegal aspect to whatever it is. And of course, that has nothing to do with us. We're not there to see things.
Right.
We're there to look at the house in those conditions. But yeah, there've been houses that I've walked into, and you open a door, you're in a room, bedroom, whatever it is, and there's a handgun sitting on the sitting on the nightstand. So I think lawful gun owners don't leave their things sitting around like that.
Right.
So you have to assume that it's illegal.
Right.
Now, does that have any bearing on what we're doing? No, not at all. Just and certainly make sure you don't touch it.
Yeah.
You don't want to be leaving a fingerprint on that.
No, obviously not.
So we do our job and we get out. So
that is handguns on side tables. You never think, but is there any kind of expectation
everybody
to
lives
report?
Everybody lives somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have. Everybody's living somewhere. But is there an expectation? This is just kind of sidebar. But do you have to report anything illegal that you see?
There's nothing in the industry that says that we should be reporting those things to any authority. And in fact, for us to take that extra leap, and it would be a leap, you're just inviting problems because that person that lives there knows who was in the house.
Right.
We don't want that phone call. We don't want that person stopping by our
So you're
place
just there
later.
to inspect the home. And
We're there to inspect the house. Sorry, we can't
Fair
do
enough.
anything about that stuff.
Tell me about a time maybe. Have you ever seen something where you walked in, you're there to do a home inspection, and you were just like, I mean, minus the hoarding one, but you were just like, nope, like something is wrong, or I need to leave, or anything of the sort where it was just, your spidey senses went off.
It's funny because I've said spidey senses for years. In that context, I'm not that small of a person. It takes a lot for me to feel unsafe.
Okay.
So I've personally not gone into a house and needed to leave halfway through. But yeah, there's been more than enough stuff where you walk in and you look at what's there, and the expectation is, there's some illegal activity going on, and that of course has nothing to do with our home inspection.
Right.
So we just get the work done and leave.
Wow.
But like I tell my guys, you make sure that you're in a safe position.
Right.
If you don't like something, of course you leave.
Yeah.
I just haven't found that line for myself yet. Maybe I should have.
With all your experience.
Well, there's been interesting houses where we've gone in to do the inspection, and you find things like you go in the basement and it's set up like a nightclub. It's a bar.
In the house.
In the house.
Large. Must be large homes.
In some cases. Large dancing table. Room for a pole. The pole's there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. Any kind of rooms where you saw, you were just like, like just kind of made you think like twice, like, oh shit, I did not know that was a thing. Or
can we say that on this podcast? Dungeons?
Oh, no way.
There's been a couple.
You've seen dungeons.
Open a door and it's a dungeon.
No way.
Yeah.
In a home inspection.
Oh yeah. Everybody has their thing. Whatever they do, I don't know. That's up to them.
Are you grading the structural integrity of said fixtures?
No, but when you turn on the light switch, and it's a black light.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah. Home
no, I'll pull the flashlight out and look around and use the flashlight.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Of course, it is what it is. I've said for years, one of the odd little benefits of doing home inspections is that we go into a lot of different houses. You see where everybody lives, and a lot of different people collect a lot of different things. Not that we're there to see your stuff.
Yeah, you must see crazy stuff.
Yeah, not that we're there to see your stuff, but most people that collect things, I think, display things, and they'll put it on the wall. And of course, they have to assume that we're going to be able to see it.
Well, what are some collections that you've seen?
Oh, there's the typical lighter collections. For some people, it's all
Typical? That's a
it-
thing? People collect lighters?
No, when I say lighter, I mean
lighter weight.
lighter in terms of lightweight, simpler, easier,
Right,
less
right.
cost.
Right.
So
What are some?
it's the Star Wars memorabilia.
Oh, yeah.
It's the movie, the anime memorabilia. The number of homes that I've gone into where the basement is set up or the media room is set up like an actual theater, where you walk through the doors and it's the cashier and it's the concession stand and the popcorn machine, and it's movie night when you go over there.
Oh, so it's not your typical home theater that people just have a room with.
It's not your
No,
typical home
they've
theater.
set it up.
They've literally set it up. Everything, posters, all the way back to the 1930s, the golden age of movies and everything else.
No way.
Yeah, so that's the typical, I'll say, lighter stuff. Getting into a little bit more, it's the people that collect beetles, insects, things that
Like
require
taxidermy and stuff.
yeah, things that require more expertise and take time to collect. And
What,
like
what are some of
talking,
these crazy things
I'm
that you
talking
see
shadow
in
boxes
taxidermy?
all over the place.
No way.
Yeah.
In like a basement or a room? Like a
Oh,
bedroom
living
or-
room, whole house, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Oh, way.
Other people, I remember one house, actually, I won't mention the municipality, walked into it. It was a normal house, just a normal average house, 1980s. And immediately there's gold records all over the place. And the person that lived there is a musician, worked in music industry, and has worked with all these different people. And yeah, he's part of their gold record. So he's got gold records everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, platinum, gold, whatever it is. Yeah,
And they're
Very-
just out and displayed.
everything's displayed. Very neat. And you don't expect to see that type of stuff in just an average house.
Right.
So, in other cases, the most expensive.
Yeah, what is the craziest, expensive?
The most expensive collection I've seen to date, I was told, was valued at $36 million.
$36 million collection. that
Collection in
somebody
the
has.
house that I was inspecting.
You can't say what it was because that's too expensive.
Yeah, I won't mention what it
Yeah,
was.
you can't say that. That's just a fair assumption.
No, other types of interesting collections. First Nations art, very cool,
Oh, wow. Okay.
near and dear to my heart.
Right.
The Coca-Cola collections and stuff like that are kind of cool too.
Coca-Cola collection.
Oh yeah,
Just anything that has Coca-Cola on it.
anything that has Coca-Cola. It can be the Coke button, regardless of size.
Right.
It can be coolers and freezers and just all the memorabilia. So the car collections.
I actually walked into a home once, and there's two highlight moments for me when I walked in, and I was just like, what the hell am I looking at?
Right.
And time number one was, it was a home in Sullivan. I don't think it's there anymore, actually. I'm pretty sure it got torn down. I was walking into the home with, it was a couple that I was with.
Yep.
So we were walking through the bedrooms. There's a long hallway, and there's 3 bedrooms. And the first room was an office, and we opened the door to room number 2, and there were dolls everywhere, and they were pointed at the door, and it scared the shit out of me. And then
Like porcelain dolls or something.
almost Barbie,
Higher
almost
end dolls.
Barbie looking dolls.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
those.
Yeah.
And then it just threw us off. And then the seller happened to be home, and we were like, and she's like, that scared you, didn't it? And we were just like, and it's because back in the day, she used to design them, and
Yeah.
she would create the first prototype.
It's very
and
cool.
She'd sent it off somewhere.
Yep.
And then they would be like, yeah, we're going to mass produce this. And so her job was to create the designs.
Right.
Super, super unique. Another one I saw was, I walked into a basement of a home in North Delta, and this guy had race car memorabilia everywhere.
Right.
And then I realized it wasn't memorabilia, it was his stuff. He was a race
Right.
car driver. He was a NASCAR driver.
Oh, cool.
And
Very cool.
it was just all of his stuff. And
Was
he
the
had
car
came-
there?
No.
Yeah.
It was I think the gentleman had passed.
Yeah.
And it was just all of his stuff, and the kids were selling the
I've
property
seen a few real race cars.
in properties.
Yep, at properties.
Let's talk about that for a sec. You've opened the door to garages
Mhm.
before.
Mhm.
What's the craziest car you've seen?
Craziest car.
I mean,
ha-
touching it out of in the context of our conversation 5 minutes ago, you've seen stuff where you've been like, these cars do not make sense for the home. They must be like ding ding ding.
Well,
illegal
I
activity.
remember one house inspection. Probably this would be more than 12 years ago now, and get to the house. It's a nicer estate type house, 1990s, so not quite middle aged,
Right.
but it's got a little bit of time into it. And across the front yard is, and at the time, H2s were kind of brand new.
Oh yeah. Back then.
Yeah, and this thing was just to the nines, chrome, everything. Yeah, it was probably about 15 years ago now that I say that.
Yeah.
And then there were a whole bunch of just work trucks. Didn't make sense. Why do we got work trucks all over the yard, including parked on the grass, including around the backyard and stuff? And in talking to that garage had 2 Vipers, and it was a 4-car garage. I remember there being 2 Vipers
back then.
Yeah,
okay.
2 Vipers, and I don't remember what the other 2 cars were, but there were 4 cars in the 4-car garage. And the reason that I remember the Vipers is because I've always thought they were pretty cool.
Yeah.
And in talking to the owner of the house, he's a car buff, so he collects cars, buys cars and stuff like that. But he was also into other business ventures where, yeah, I just needed a place to park these few trucks for a couple of weeks. And in talking to him, it was kind of interesting because he said, "Oh yeah, when times are good, I'll buy cars. If I need to raise money, I'll liquidate a couple cars." And that was just his passion.
That's just his thing.
His passion.
Just cars.
Very cool.
Wow. And
so a lot of different people do a lot of different things, and I know not everybody's into everything. That's fine. It's great.
Yeah. Fair enough. What was a time where you had to do an inspection maybe, and you saw something that you were just like, we need help. Like this is, I need another guy. And you had to call in maybe like a contractor, or you had to call in an engineer or anything. Have you ever seen something super extreme?
So recommending further reviews is something that's pretty standard in our industry.
Okay.
So as home inspectors, we are considered to be more generalists in everything that we're looking at. We
Right.
go out, we look at it, we identify, hey, this is a major problem. Whether it's beyond my expertise or not, you got to label it, tell people about it, make a recommendation. So we're not always part of the conversation when the next person comes in, that expert, whether it be a tradesperson,
right,
or whether it be an engineer or an architect. And I do remember one house, this is about 7 years ago, where I had found some structural deficiencies within the basement. The house wasn't that old. It was actually very new. And those structural deficiencies looked more like joist hangers and,
right.
and just mechanical attachment that was missing.
Yeah.
And the long and short of it was the engineer that was part of the construction said, "Oh yeah, the home inspector is exactly right." And when the builder,
so they backed you up.
Yeah, they backed us up.
Yeah.
And then when the builder looked at it, he wanted to argue, no, I don't need any of that stuff. So the engineer actually recanted his statement. And of course, there's nothing we can do about that.
No,
all we can do about that is tell the client what the conditions are that we find.
Right.
And you should have a contractor install this stuff when you take possession. So those are things that are fixable.
We've got to wrap up, but there's one question I have to ask you.
Yeah.
Has there ever been some crazy emergency that's happened
while
you've had a home inspection?
The most interesting emergency was my own. And this
so
my own emergency. During an inspection. My wife's pregnant with our third son, and we have the conversation before the inspection, where we have the conversation probably weeks in advance, where we have it determined, when your water breaks, please give me a call right away so I know where we're at. If I'm at work, I just need to be able to plan.
Right.
So I just start this inspection. Phone rings. It's 5 o'clock in the evening. Summer. It's a busy market. So I take the call, and she says, "Yeah, I think it's going to be hours. Totally fine. Do your inspection and then come home." And 5 minutes later, the phone rings again. But now the client's there, the realtor's there, and we're all standing there, and I'm looking at my phone, and it's got her name on my call display, and I'm like, "Oh, I got to take this call. You better come home right now." Okay. My mother-in-law had twice the distance to drive than I did, and I beat her. I beat her home. I ended up delivering that son, my third son, on the bedroom floor because everything moved.
Happened so quickly.
Happened that quickly.
Oh no.
I'm catching. Yeah, I'm a home inspector. I'm not a medical person. So delivered my son. And that, I tell you, is the scariest thing that I've ever done, because our second son had the cord wrapped around his neck when he was born.
Oh no.
So I was afraid I was going to run into something like that.
So you had to make it home.
So I delivered number 3.
Oh
Yeah.
no!
Now,
wait.
fortunately,
you
it all-
delivered number 3.
I delivered number 3. We call.
Benny.
Adding to the story, it was kind of interesting because, when I realized what was going on, I picked up my phone. I dialed 911. I said, "We're having a baby at home," and they said, "Congratulations." I said, "It's not planned." So they decided to send the ambulance. But at that same time, there was a major event going on in Langley. We lived in Cloverdale at the time. We still do. So all the first responders on the paramedic side were in Langley. So we had to wait for the people from White Rock. And by the time they got there,
Benny had already done the job.
Liam's delivered.
Benny had already done the job.
I'd already done the job. It was fun.
Benny,
It was fun.
this was awesome. It's the first episode, so cheers.
Cheers.
I'm really, really grateful that you came. There'll be more of these to come, and hopefully we'll have you back on. I look forward to putting these out. People will hear some crazy stories, and hopefully they'll learn something.
I enjoy it.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Benny.
Benny. Thank you.
Oh, man.
Was that enough story?
A minute or two over there, but appreciate it.